Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Spurs from the Stands. I'm Sarah, and we have a lot to get through today. You thought that you were just going to be watching some football games today, but no, we've had news on the Levy front. We've had a little bit of murmuring of some transfers, and it sounds like the mole is still within our midst because the lineup for tomorrow has supposedly been leaked. So we're going to cover all of that and more in today's video. I just want to do a quick community announcement and just thank you all for sticking with me yesterday on the live. That was a little bit dodgy in terms of quality. So I appreciate you sticking with me. I did manage to recover the file. So if you haven't already watched the live and you want to rewatch it, I would recommend watching the re-uploaded version that I did as a video rather than on the live page because it's better. I think it takes a while for these files to render, but that's where we're at with that at the moment. I would like to give a very special shout out and warm welcome to our very first COYS Collective member, and that is Wayne Bonner. So shout out to you, Wayne. Thanks so much for joining and welcome aboard. You are the first COYS Collective member. And for those of you that haven't seen yet about our membership, it's because I haven't spoken about it. And yeah, you can head over to the community tab, I think it is, or the membership tab, where you can find out more about how to join our tribe. So obviously we're building here a COYS Collective tribe. That's what I've called it for now. What do we think of the name? Do we like it? Do we not? I've created some very cool custom emojis, if I say so myself. You won't see any other channel having a little scarf that says COYS on it. So yeah, we have some little cute emojis that I'm very proud of. We have a little one that's pain, a little one that's hope, and one that's trust the process. And I created those, even though it was with the help of AI. I did create them and I thought they were quite innovative. So I hope you like them. If you do like them or have any other suggestions and you want to start using them on the channel, then let me know and I can create some more. That'll be fun. So thank you very much, Wayne. Welcome to the family. Welcome everyone else to the family. If you want to jump in and ride that train with us, then you are more than welcome. And if not, if you just enjoy the content on here, that's fine too. But I do appreciate you all either way. Some other stuff. Yes, so in terms of the community stuff, I did post yesterday in the community tab a little poll because I want to get to know you guys a little bit better. We're still growing around here. So if you are watching for the first time, please do like, subscribe, comment, share with your mates, all of that jazz, because it does definitely help the channel. And I'm hoping that we can get to 2,500 people by next Thursday, which is quite ambitious, I'm aware. And we seem to be hovering around the 2,000 mark at the moment. So your support is greatly appreciated and I welcome you all on board. However, we had almost 10% of you did vote in the poll that I put up yesterday, which was how would you describe yourself as a Spurs fan? And I'm super curious to hear, how involved you guys are, what your interests are. Then that's going to help me create more content for you guys that you're interested in. Because at the moment, I'm kind of just going down rabbit holes and, looking at the news. So if there are particular topics that aren't trending in the main domain, I'm certainly happy to cover those. And I've seen some comments. Some of you have written some extensive questions that you want me to have a look into. We've had some questions about sponsorships and stadium sponsorships, shirt sponsorships, all of that kind of stuff. And for sure, over time, over due course, we're going to cover a lot of stuff. But obviously, at the moment, there's a lot of news circulating, particularly since the window is still open. So that is what this video is about. The other thing just to say is that I have created a playlist called Player Pods, which is inside my playlist tab. So if you head over there, you can check out the player pods that I'm aware of. There have been a couple in the past few days. So we had Paulinia, who did an interview with BBC. We had Gallagher yesterday, who did an interview with Sky Sports News. Kulusevski's interview came out as well. That was with Chunks, but I think that's on TikTok, so I can't add that into the YouTube playlist. But if you're interested in hearing stuff, Gallagher was all about his move and how everything happened so quickly and behind the scenes of that kind of stuff. If you're interested in our players, then maybe you want to head over there and check that out after watching this. So let's dive in. The first thing I'm going to kick off with is talking about our transfers, and then I'm going to dive into this whole Levy question. and whether he's going to be selling his stake in the club and what that means for the club. And I bet you guys are really interested in snooping in on that one. So first things first, Dane Scarlett, one of our own, he left the club on loan yesterday to go to Hibernian Football Club in the Scottish League. They currently sit fifth. So I would just want to say best of luck to Scarlett. They play Rangers on Sunday. So who knows, it could be a Mikey Moore, Dane Scarlett derby happening in the Scottish League on Sunday. But I do wish him all the best. Look, it's a bit of a shame from the perspective of Spurs because obviously he's a player who was in our squad. He counted as homegrown. So we've lost a player in our first team. That would suggest to me that someone is on their way, even if it is on loan. However, of course, these things are speculative. But typically, when you see that kind of movement, it's hard not to think that someone's being brought in. So we'll remain positive on that one. We still have a couple of days ago, so don't rule it out just yet. There has been some other moves as well, and this is particularly about our academy players. So in terms of the PL2, Tottenham Hotspur actually played yesterday in the under-21s and they lost 2-1 to Everton. Now, one of the things about the PL2, and not that I'm an expert in the PL2, and I'm sure some of you watch it much more closely than I do, but the Tottenham Hotspur under-21s, they are currently sitting 8th in the league. And obviously there's a big league. It's a league of 29 teams, so it's a very big league. However, unfortunately, Williams Barnett is injured at the moment, and we actually, in terms of our academy players, we actually lack a lot of midfield and attacking players. So it was interesting to see that our latest signing has been Elisha Suwunmi. So welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, Elisha. He came from the West Ham United Academy, 18 years of age. And what's very interesting about this move to me is how this plays out in the bigger picture of things in terms of not just the PL2, but in terms of the Premier League and our quotas for Champions League and things like that. And the reason why I wanted to bring this in, obviously, I don't know too much about Suwunmi. I know he had his first team minutes yesterday, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. But the reason why I think this is just something to note is because of this whole locally grown homegrown players. So just to clarify, a locally trained player is someone who's been registered for a team for 3 years between the ages of 15 and 21. So he will count as a homegrown player, but he will not count as a club trained player until, I believe, 21. So that's good on the homegrown front, because if he's coming from West Ham, I don't know how long he's been at West Ham, but assuming that's been for 3 seasons, then he would count under the homegrown quota. Now, the challenge with this is because for the Champions League squad, there is a youth exemption. So players who are under 21, they can be listed under our list B of players who are listed in the squad. And that's important because, look, players like Byfield came on in the past 2 Champions League games. So what does this mean in terms of this young player coming through? What does it mean in terms of him for the rest of this season? Well, it means that he can't join our list B because he hasn't been with the club for 2 consecutive years. So he cannot be listed unless he comes in as a homegrown player for our Champions League squad. Now, look, he's probably very inexperienced. Obviously, in terms of numbers, because we've lost Scarlett, if you're going to put an attacker in, unfortunately, it's not going to be this kid because you've got other players in the squad which are going to take priority. So my point being is that you're probably going to have to wait until next year, if we're in any European football at all, to see Elisha in our list B of players. Well, actually, that won't be next year. It'll be the year after. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about players' futures, potentially in future, a bit like Sousa. I mean, he's only a year younger than Sousa at the end of the day. So, sometimes players can come through the ranks very quickly. Sometimes they just need a shot. But I think what I take from this is that there has been a bit of a reshuffle in the under 21s in the Tottenham Academy, because it looks like that they've recognized there is a gap in the squad. And in terms of the progression, and we know we lack homegrown players, what that signals to me is they've brought someone in who is locally trained, and he can potentially be one for the future under this homegrown quota. So I think that's quite positive, and I think it shows. I mean, look, we're all hoping for first team players to come in, and hopefully one still does come in. But I think that's something important when we talk about planning for the future. I think it's important to know that this is something that it looks on the surface that the club is recognizing and making tweaks and changes and a bit of a reshuffle at that level, considering Scarlett's out. Excuse me. So Wunmi is in. And the other player that I just want to mention is Tai Hall. He, I believe, is a midfielder. He currently is in our academy, and he scored for the under 18s this week. He had his first team squad in the Champions League. He was in the first team squad, should I say, for the Champions League, and he signed a new contract. So all in all, congratulations to Ty as well. It'll be interesting to see his career progression. Obviously, he is still going to be on the bench in the Champions League because he's part of the List B quota or the List B exemptions that we have. So who knows? Maybe he's a player for the future, but securing a player like that, I think, is really good. I've just seen. Someone's just said, okay, something completely different, but Jamie Donnelly is back in Oxford United training after a horrible injury on his debut. So, hopefully a good recovery for Jamie Donnelly, and hopefully he recovers well. The other person that made the news this week was Timo Werner. Timo Werner, he has, where's he gone? I did save this. Was it like Earthquake FC? Something like that? Can I see this? Not that anyone really cares about Timo Werner, but yes, he went to the SJ Earthquakes. And I did see on Instagram that a lot of our players congratulated him, which is really nice to see. So you had Spence, Mickey van der Ven, Madders, all wishing him good luck, farewell, all liking his post, giving him all the best. So it sounds like they're all still in touch. And look, they're all friends, they're all mates, and whatever you think of Timo Werner, all the best to him and his future. So moving on, that's a little bit of updates on the transfer front. Now let's move on to talking about the piece of the day that everyone wants to hear about, and that is Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy. And there you guys all were thinking, he's going to return to Tottenham Hotspur. We need him back. Well, that's not the case. Because Bloomberg reported last night, and I'm going to maybe just skim this article for you guys, because some of you might already heard the news if you haven't been living under a rock. So the title, and look, the title of this article is very, very misleading, because it said, Levy is said in talks to sell stake in Tottenham Hotspur. Before I read this, let's just reframe this, because Daniel Levy does not have stakes in Tottenham Hotspur. Daniel Levy has stakes in ENIC, who is a majority shareholder of Tottenham. So he is indirectly looking to sell his shares in Tottenham Hotspur. He does not have shares in Tottenham Hotspur. So what a bit of fantastic clickbait there from Bloomberg, because they clearly know they're going to ruffle some feathers, and I'll talk more about perhaps why they've done that after I've just read you this. So, businessman Daniel Levy is in talks to sell his nearly 30% stake in the group that owns Tottenham Hotspur to a consortium that includes Hong Kong businessman NG Wing Fai. According to people familiar with the matter, Levy was ousted as executive chairman of Premier League team Tottenham Hotspur last year, is in discussion to sell his stake for about £1 billion or $1.4 billion. One of the people said, asking not to be identified as the information is private, so they probably got a very good tip off. Most of the capital is coming from a number of Asian business tycoons, the people said. The name of the consortium could not immediately be learned. However, now we know that it's Firehawk Holdings. NG declined to comment. Levy didn't respond to a text message. The Lewis family said it has not been in the loop over any negotiations with Levy. Deliberations are ongoing and could still fall apart, the people said. And then it just goes on to say, you know, what the breakdown is and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So I just want to rewind the tapes a little bit for you guys, because I haven't been here that long, especially since September. So let's just rewind the tapes, because the club released a statement on September the 7th. So I'm taking you all the way back to September the 7th, where the board of Tottenham Hotspur came out with a statement that said they are aware of recent media speculation and confirms that its majority shareholder, ENIC Sports and Developments Holding, has received and unequivocally rejected separate preliminary expressions of interest in relation to proposals to acquire the entire issued and to be issued share capital of ENIC. Okay, the letter goes on quite a lot more, but the point that I wanted to draw your attention to is that it said majority shareholder. So obviously ENIC is the majority shareholder of Tottenham, but Levy within that is a minority shareholder. So it said the board of the club and ENIC confirmed that Tottenham Hotspur is not for sale, and ENIC has no intention to accept any such offer to acquire its interest in the club. We then heard on October the 6th, so 1 month later, that US tech consortium opted against a 4.5 billion Tottenham Hotspur bid, and that was with the American tech entrepreneur Brooklyn ENIC, and he was no longer interested in making a bid from Tottenham Hotspur, as was the Firehawk Consortium Limited. And so the valuation at October was 4.5 billion, which we know was an overestimation at the time. Now, why am I telling you this? This is all very important because the speculation is that Levy is looking to sell his 30% stake, and actually it's just under 30%, but he is looking to sell his stake in Tottenham Hotspur for £1 billion. Pounds is what is being reported as of right now. Now, obviously, things are subject to change. Things might not be incredibly accurate, but we know that ENIC owns around 87% of Tottenham Hotspur. And the remaining 13% is held by private investors, some of those being fans. So I think it was back in the 90s that the club went public, and at the time some members and some fans bought shares, and I've actually seen some of those share slips, so they might be hanging around your loft somewhere or your attic or something like that. But anyway, so Daniel Levy holds a minority stake of 30% of the 87%. He does not own 30% of Tottenham Hotspur. Now, this is a very important point to note, because then when I was looking at what would that make the current valuation of the club, I have estimated with the support of AI, with the support of AI, I have come to the estimation that should Levy sell his stake at 1 billion, that would make the club around 3.8 billion pounds, which is less than the 4.5 billion originally speculated and was rejected. So all of this is very relevant, because you also have to keep in mind that of ENIC, 86% of ENIC's assets are held in the Bahamas. They are not held in the UK. So all of this is very important because these deals are very, very complex. And there is something called, where was it? Let me just find this. There is something called, I can't find it, but there's something called the takeover code. the UK Takeover Code. I can't find where it was, which article it was, but there's something called the UK Takeover Code, which basically implies and states that in order for shares to be sold, it needs to be consulted with all shareholders and they need to agree. Now, I'm not an expert in takeovers. However, the reason why this could be increasingly complicated is because you have different financial regulations, different codes of conducts, depending whether assets and liabilities and things like that, investments, etc., are within the UK or within the Bahamas. So obviously that's going to affect tax implications, tax breaks. It's going to affect the sale of the club, the equity, who's going to buy it. Does that affect the Lewis family and their shareholdings, and how does that all break down? So look, this is very new information, so we don't know too much yet, and I don't want to speculate equally. So I think what the takeaway from this for me personally is, and this is my hot take, is that I think this is a PR plug. I think this is a PR move to notify the public that Daniel Levy has interest in selling his shares. And the reason why this is so important is because when you put out, an announcement that a certain party is interested, then you're going to drum up interest from other types of investors. So from the outset, considering this is a first time breaking news piece of information that we've received, because as far as we were concerned, Levy was quite happy being a shareholder of ENIC, but look, his era is over, his era is finished, he's moved on, the club wants to move on. So I think it's just best for all parties. Daniel Levy, he's done as much as he could with the time and the resources that he had at the club. He did some amazing things. Thank you for the new stadium, Levy. And if it's now time for you to leave and to sell your shares, that's fine if it helps the club move forward. And likewise, from the Lewis family's perspective, if they want a new investor on board who potentially wants to invest more into the club, perhaps they can even increase how much the club is worth by doing that. On the flip side, of course, the club lost money in 2024. So there is an argument to suggest that next season, if Spurs were to get relegated, if Spurs did not finish in those top 8 spaces and didn't get European football, would that mean that, the revenue produced would also be depreciating, which then reduces how much you're going to sell the club for, which is a point that I made in, I can't even remember which video I'd said it in now, but in one of the videos I spoke about the board and the breakdown and all of that kind of stuff. And I basically said that now is not the right time for ENIC to sell, because in terms of valuations and things, they're not going to want to make a loss because they're majority stakeholder. Now, that might not apply to Daniel Levy because he's a minority stakeholder and he's been pushed out of the fold. So from his perspective, he has more incentive to sell. And this could actually be a good thing for the club because it's easier to get someone on board who's going to pay £1 million and work closely with the Levy family with a future prospect of taking over in its entirety, rather than having a majority stakeholder take over with someone else having a minority. So if you see what I mean, it means that the Lewis family retain their major stakeholder in this. Whether they look to sell some of that in future or buy out Daniel Levy, obviously they're not looking to buy out Daniel Levy, because if they were, I think they probably would have already done it when they were letting him go. But look, all of these things are very nuanced. Someone came at me in the chat when I did announce that it's not good timing to sell. Someone came at me and they were like, this is rubbish, this is ridiculous, the club's not worth 5 billion. I meant 5 billion US dollars, which is about 4.5 billion pounds. And so the 3.8 billion narrative, from what the estimations that I've calculated are, that kind of seems sort of on par of what you think. Maybe it's a little bit less than what they were originally saying, and given where we're at and things like that. I think that could be something that is plausible. I think that the other moving part to all of this is obviously this is a Hong Kong investor. So in terms of the look, I'm not going to talk to you guys about, global markets and things like that, but just like very, very high level. The Hong Kong market is probably one of the more stable markets. We know that there's a lot of politics going on. We know that you've got the China versus America and Russia and all of that stuff that's going on in the wider context of the world and politics. But that is important and valid when you're having conversations about takeovers, because this is not insignificant money. And, it's going to sway it could potentially sway global markets as well. So Hong Kong is generally quite stable. Of course, within that, they have maybe some contentious issues with China and Taiwan and things like that. So look, the Middle East is very unsettled right now, but there's a lot of oil and gas money. We know that. You have a lot of tech money that's in America. And then you have, Singapore that's also sort of on the tech front as well. So you have a lot of different moving parts. A lot of different investors. Don't forget, a lot of investors hold especially the ultra high net worth individuals, they don't tend to hold their money firstly as liquid cash, but also even when it is tied up in assets, it's probably not going to be in places where you're going to have high tax liabilities, hence why you see that ENIC, for example, has most of their holdings in the Bahamas. And there was a very good documentary all on Netflix, which was about that, and I've completely forgotten what it was called, so if I remember it, I'll let you all know in the comments. But the last thing for today, what do you guys think about this Levy news? What's the general feeling about it? Do we think that's good? Do we think that's bad? Does no one really care? What does that mean for transfers and things like that? But interested to hear what we think maybe that could affect the future of Spurs. And the other thing to think about in that front as well, before I move on, is the sponsorship deals for the stadium, for the new shirt sponsorship, which we know AIA is expiring in 2027, I think it is. So the contract runs out next year. So there's a lot of new bids and new money coming into the club. So I think that's something important to keep in mind as well. Whether there is a stadium sponsor on the horizon that doesn't want to work with Levy, that could also be something. Maybe they want a bigger, smaller bid. So all of those things come into play, right? And maybe even Levy's making a quick move because the club direction is changing, and maybe he doesn't believe in the direction that it's going anymore, and that's fair enough. Right, just a couple of quick things. So I obviously did the lineup yesterday in my live. I am going to read you the lineup that I've received, because I would imagine if I'm receiving it, it probably means it's already all over Twitter. So another message to our internal workings, our internal personnel at Tottenham Hotspur. You need to sort out this mole, and you need to get this traitor out of our club, because we are fed up of having our lineup leaked to our competitors before every game. And I know one of you inside the club is having some banter with the Spurs app and, putting Gallagher in shirts and removing Frankfurt from the team, from the Champions League list and all of that jazz, but it's not funny. Football is a serious game. There's a lot riding on tomorrow, and so releasing our team lineup is it's not. You can't be. Look, you might be unified and aligned on the direction that the club is taking, but you have traitors amongst your midst who are quite happy to sabotage the club. Anyway, having said that, look, I might be one of those saboteurs, but if it's on the public domain already, it's not going to do any harm at me reading it here. So I've had word that our lineup for tomorrow is going to be Vicario, Gray, Dragusin, Paulinia, Romero, Udogi, Gallagher, Bissouma, Xavi, Kolo and Solanke. So I don't know if that's true or not. I said to you guys in the chat yesterday that Dragusin would be playing, and you all said in the chat no. But I did have a hunch that Dragusin might be playing. I just feel that if Mickey van der Ven's got a knock, it's best to rest him and to keep him rested and save him, and maybe even have him on the bench. And if Dragusin is looking for a move out, now's the time to put him in the shop window. So he might come off the back of that game and then be sold on Monday. So look, anything can happen. There's not too much change to what we thought. We all said that we thought maybe Paulinho and Gallagher would be in the squad, but it looks like Bissouma is also going to be in the squad from what we've heard, speculation. So I don't know how that actually looks in terms of formation, and I don't know if I want to make this video a massively long one, but just from the offset, it looks, how would that even work? How would that even work? Oh, you've got no Danso. Oh, you've got no Danso. So that means our back line would be Romero, Paulinho, Dragusin. Oh, hang on a minute. That does change things quite a lot, doesn't it? So you've got okay, so back three could be Romero, Paulinho, Dragusin with oh no, wait, hold on. You've got no right winger. What is going on? You've got no right winger. Okay, so it looks like maybe it could be a back four. So your back four would be Paulinho on the right wing, Romero, Dragusin, Udogi, and then you'd have a midfield of Gallagher, Biss, and Gray. No. You'd have a holding of Gallagher and Biss, and then you'd have Gray, Xavi, Kolo, and Solanke. I don't know. What do you guys think that based on that, based on what I've just told you, what do you guys think the formation is going to be tomorrow? So I said Vicario, Gray, Dragusin, Paulinho, Romero, Udogi, Gallagher, Bissouma, Xavi, Kolo, Solanke. So what do you guys think the formation is going to be for tomorrow? Because from the sounds of it, that's quite a big formation change because you've got no Spence and you've got no Porro. So that's an interesting one. We do know that Gray can play right back. So you also have the option of Gray being right back alongside Romero, Dragusin, and Udogi. That's an option. And then you'd have Paulinho, Gallagher with a front three of Xavi, Bissouma, and Kolo. No, Gallagher. Sorry. You'd have Paulinho and Biss with Gallagher, Xavi, and Kolo. So maybe you'd put, I didn't even know. Where's the right winger in that? Very bizarre. I don't know. What do you guys think to that? Do you think it's nonsense? Do you think it's someone just toying with us? Do you think I'm right on the mole? I guess we'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out. But thanks so much, guys, for sticking around. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Share your thoughts, comments, vote in the community tab, join the membership, all of that jazz. And I'll see you all very soon tomorrow in the Match Day vlog. Bye for now.